What is up, everybody? This is Raw Matt, and today we're going to be talking to you about the release of our 4 most recent books. And we're going to be talking, answering some questions probably from the audience. And most importantly, we're going to be telling everybody the value of these books because nothing like them really exists. Yes, Praise, it is live.
We got Praise in the live chat. Brother Praise, always a pleasure. #1 producer on YouTube, if you ask me.
Oh,
we
he's
got
awesome.
Tyler, Yeshua. What's up? Good to see everybody. Matt, how you doing today, brother?
Doing good, man. This will be fun. Haven't gone live in a while, man. It's pretty much like this is all we do. Is right.
This is it's pretty much a full-time job. You know, we're putting a lot out there. Still trying to make as many videos as possible. Announcement wise, we've got a debate next week on evolution, microevolution versus macroevolution versus it's going to be Kent Hovind and Dan Cardinal. So that should be a good one. I think that one might break the internet. That's going to be a lot of fun. That's going to be quick. That's going to come quick for sure. Today's what, the 16th? Summer's flying by. So, you having a good day, Matt?
Oh yeah, doing good. I think I'm like you now. We just stay up all night long writing. So we'll say sorry to the audience because we're usually releasing a video almost every single day. So because that's slowed down, now you know why.
Well, I think like we were talking about earlier, it's to the point now where trying to get on a good schedule is probably not going to happen. I find that it's almost like my mind and things are coming to me. Breakthroughs are coming, more so during the night. It's more peaceful. Kids are sleeping. There's no yelling going on, like you were saying.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And nighttime just goes by so fast too. You can start writing, or you're doing jumping in a hangout or something, and all of a sudden it's like 3-4 hours fly by. It's like, where'd the time go?
Oh yeah, I know. Especially if you're multitasking. Stop.
Right, and that's usually what I'm doing. I'm usually doing 3 or 4 things at the same time. So
yeah, kind of hard to keep up watching other people, like even on our team, go live and start to talk about things. It's really distracting. But
right,
it's all right.
Today's going to be a good day. We're going to go through a few things. I've got a coffee here, so that's going to keep me going for a couple hours. And yeah, why don't we get right into it? Lil YEC, he's one of our favorites. Thanks for joining us today. Hope you're doing well, brother. Hope you're enjoying the summer. Okay, so why don't we? So you can see from. Well, you know what? Let's start with last night's debate, for example, on modern day debate, human evolution. Erica and Smokey. What were some of your thoughts on I guess whatever you might have seen on that one, Matt?
Smokey's weakness would be going into the individual hominid species. That's Erica's specialty. So rather than going into what somebody's specialty is, the topic should have been more along the lines of why is evolution true, not just specifically human evolution. Because when you When you're
Right.
going to be debating on a specific topic, you're going to get into the details. And when that person knows more details, that alone makes it sound like they're winning. So therefore, you should never go into, especially if it's their specialty. It's like me getting into a debate with a mechanic on the inner workings of a car when I just know the general capacity of a car.
It's like me getting
You know what I mean? He's going to look at that and say, well, obviously the mechanic's going to win this debate. They know everything about the car. So in reality, what I would debate on is an overall general consensus about vehicles. I wouldn't get into the details about a specific variety of car. So the same thing is what he should have done, because Erica likes to jump into little tiny fine details, little tiny specific things that he won't know. And therefore, now he's thrown off of his whole debate strategy. It just doesn't make sense to jump into that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's her specialty. She's good with it. She's smart. She knows the terms. She knows the arguments. Even just throwing some of those names out there, right? Australopithecus afarensis, Homo heidelbergensis, Homo floresiensis. If you're not really familiar with the terms of the specific hominins, then it could throw you off. If you're kind of going up against somebody who that's their expertise, and some of the things they present might seem, especially if they're not really giving the other side, it might seem convincing to them who haven't really studied it too much. But I think that was an important question to ask, because this book, Why Human Evolution is False, the Scientific Case for Independent Origins, that I wrote, and then you contributed quite a bit to the appendix. And this is, we've made sure that this one was pretty well irrefutable. And it directly addresses Erica's arguments, which also flow down to, like, Bill Ludlow uses kind of those same arguments, the ones that focus more so on the paleontology and paleontology and human evolution, for example, the fossil record. So, we go through them all one by one, and some of your more recent ones, like Homo naledi, for example, that a lot of people might not be too familiar with, that might throw you off, but we address that one in detail as well. So, even actually, you know what? I think what I'm going to do here is screen share and give kind of an idea into what to expect in the book. So, for example, like in a nutshell, I point out a few things. There's a couple different things going on that give people like Erica and just the paleo experts themselves the impression that the bones that they're presenting us are actually transitional. One being the fact that oftentimes there's artificial species that just consist of like a mixture of ape and human beings. That's why, and here's the thing, that the critics will often say, okay, you're resorting to a conspiracy. You're saying they've done this intentionally, when that's not the case. It has been done intentionally in the past. Piltdown Man, for example, we cover that. But oftentimes it's done unintentional. These are these sites that the paleo experts and the researchers are going to find their next big so-called transitional form, linking ape to man, is very, very often scattered with fragmented bones. So then you're going to get bones of multiple species. This is a fact, in those same bone beds, and they are going to be confused oftentimes as single species, when in fact they're the same. They're separate species. Humans, apes, other animals too. Bones have been mixed in those same bone beds. That's why so-called transitionals like Australopithecus sediba, they're often referred to even by the paleo experts as this perfect mosaic. And the anatomy is oftentimes contradictory, where certain parts are just like clearly fully human, while other parts are clearly fully ape. There's not even really a transitional scene. It's just, it's contradictory, and they use those exact words too. There's been papers and articles from paleo experts themselves suggesting that creatures like Sediba are essentially a ghost taxon. So, I cover that a lot, as well as I would say the main part in regards to the fossil record, of course. The genetic data, and this is great. I mean, go over gulo, pseudogene, ERVs, retrotransposons, nested hierarchies in DNA, mitochondrial DNA, you name it, pretty much, and it's covered in great detail with a ton of sources. But the biggest thing when it comes to these fossils, and you could even go rewatch, let's say, last night's debate, Erica's presentation. Go look at all the so-called transitionals she shows that are at least that are in the Homo category, like Erectus, Ergaster, Floresiensis, which people might know as the hobbits, Naledi, for example, Neanderthalensis. You can see I show clearly in the book that the bones that are shown and praised as being transitional or primitive, for example, all show pathology consistent with the model that we're purporting, suggesting that these are small inbred tribes post-Babel. And this is actually a very common theme found in the fossil record. And amazingly, when the evolutionists and the critics argue against this, that, hey, these bones that you think are primitive are nothing but diseased and riddled with pathology. For example, Naledi is a clear case of this. And you can see that the features they point out with Naledi, like the curved finger bones, for example, and many other of the distinctive features, are far better explained in terms of inbreeding and physiological changes. And those types of physiological changes, Matt, could oftentimes involve non-genetic, non-heritable modifications because of the environment. We talk about that all the time, environmental related changes. For example, those curved finger bones that they say are evidence for, ape to man transition are caused by mechanical stress from tool use, climbing, for example. But what's funny is when they argue against this, okay, and I'm kind of just going in a nutshell. I've got a paper all throughout this book titled, it's a newer one, a lot of people aren't even aware of it, coming from the secular community, an abundance of developmental anomalies and abnormalities in Pleistocene people. This actually solidifies the case. I want to give the viewers, you'll see this in the book, but I want to give the viewers just a little bit of a idea of what to expect. I've got here, I'm going to share screen. Matt, you just let me know when you can see it, brother.
Boom. There you go.
Yeah. So real quick, so you can see this. These are just excerpts from the actual paper itself. Redefine living. Good to see you, brother. Faithful, honest, and true. Jason, my man. Good job last night. Logical, plausible, probable. John, the man. Good to see everybody. John, great after show last night. Always one to remember. John should do a montage, a 15-minute montage of the atheists that all came into that 11-hour stream and just got refuted one by one. John was on fire last night. I mean, he was, that was John on steroids. That was a great after show. And Jason, you did good too, brother. That was awesome. So yeah, thanks for joining. Let's see here. So, an abundance of developmental anomalies and abnormalities in Pleistocene people, okay? You can read here certain excerpts. There are surprising numbers of developmental disorders or anomalies before the upper Paleolithic and especially before the late Pleistocene, which is, where they find these so-called transitionals. But right here, it is apparent that the Pleistocene human fossil record is characterized by a plethora of developmental abnormalities, some relatively well-known, but others extremely rare. Now, right here, consider this. The probability of finding this density of rare developmental abnormalities in recent human samples of comparable size is, again, vanishingly small. So what he's saying is he's surprised. This is obviously not a creationist, young earth creationist, and that'll typically be the response. Because I brought this paper forward before, actually in my first debate with Erica, that corroborates our thesis, suggesting that these are not transitional and primitive human beings. They are 100% human people groups. that have migrated post-Babel. Actually, there's a decent case to be made that some of them may have migrated before Babel. Maybe the Neanderthals, Erectus, for example. We don't know for sure, but it could be the case. And they became isolated because of founder effects and inbreeding resulted in accelerated genetic degeneration, which would explain exactly what the observation is in this paper. Let's see here. Yeah, so this is, so they'll often say, okay, well, the author here, he's not a young earth creationist. It's like, yeah, he's admitting that he's shocked. And look at 3 Neanderthal sequences exhibit high levels of homozygosity, implying, okay, here it is, pervasive inbreeding. This is exactly what we are saying. Here's another paper that corroborates it: the genetic cost of Neanderthal introgression. So here's the thing: the idea is presented that sufficiently explains the anomalous. Because remember, these paleo experts, they're looking for the next big missing link. There's government grants at play. Their jobs are at stake. So they're looking for the most primitive, atypical, anomalous bone possible and saying, hey, look, this is pre-human. This is primitive. This is transitional. When in fact, it's diseased. It's riddled with pathology. Look at the hobbits. Source after source. This is all just a very brief overview. That's why I highly suggest getting it. It's up to date on all your famous so-called transitionals, but this new paper corroborates it. He's shocked. Now here's the thing: he has a different assumption. Eric, the author here, he has a different starting point. Okay, he doesn't assume the Babel event. He doesn't assume creation. His worldview is evolution. Human evolution has occurred. That's why he's saying it's hard to explain here. It's right here. The probability of finding this density of rare developmental abnormalities in recent human samples is vanishingly small. See, us, it's not surprising. This is exactly what we would expect given a post-Babel dispersal event. And it's corroborated by the secularists themselves. So I highly recommend, looking more into this, but this data is pretty well irrefutable and corroborated by the secularists themselves, because it's not surprising to us, all of these rare developmental abnormalities. So human evolution is really dead. And the third thing that I point out is like your Australopithecines, your apes, right? These were just an extinct ape genus. If they were alive today, they would just be considered, a separate ape species with some unique features to some of the other apes. And because they all have certain sets of unique features, you know what I mean? They're not transitional by any means. So yeah, that's just kind of a brief overview of what to expect. And this whole inbreeding, this genetic decline, accelerated genetic degeneration, it's not far-fetched. We see it all the time. I mean, you'll see in the book here too, dying woolly mammoths were in genetic meltdown. The paper earlier with the Neanderthals, for example, the hobbits, we've got technical papers in there on the Homo floresiensis too, where the evolutionists even agree. Yeah, inbreeding, this is exactly what we're saying. So they're really lost, which is why they kind of can only resort to now about 2, which is Sediba and Habilis, which I provide sufficient evidence that they are just artificial species. This is also corroborated directly from the. Here's the thing. When you read through the papers from because there's debates going on in the paleo community, there's no consistency. They can't agree. So you can actually see them saying a lot of these same things and admitting that, the more bones they discover, the more they learn about so-called human evolution, the more confusing it becomes. Now it's like a bush versus a tree. While we just sit back and we've got more than a solid, consistent explanation for the fossil record. So, but yeah, they really all they can do is resort to like Sediba and Habilis, but we show why those are just artificial species. So I know I talked a lot there, but that's just a brief overview of what to expect in this book. It's over 200 pages, plenty of sources. You guys are going to love it. Actually, Matt and I were going to talk about how we directly. It was our idea to put a lot of the sources in visual form directly on the pages, corroborating what we're saying. Then you don't even have to flip to the book, search for the paper. It's right there, smack dab in your face. So Matt, what are your thoughts, brother? I know I talked a lot there, so.
Oh no, I mean exactly. This is kind of what we wanted to do with this book. A lot of books go into too much technical data to the point to where the reader is kind of confounded, like, oh my gosh, I got thrown so much information, and now I have to go to the back of the book and look up this resource. So what we did is actually we tried to hit every single subject along the way. For example, not just what the missing link is. We go all the way back to the start to who discovered this missing link, and then we look at who is this person, what did they do, how did they find the missing link, where did they find this missing link, how was the structure of the bones found for this missing link. Then we jump into cladistics. We talk about why they named these things why they did, and then we jump into the missing links, and then we falsify all of it. So anybody out there, I think, would have fun reading this book because nothing really like it exists. That would probably be one of my main things to elaborate on, which you mostly just focused on, really just letting the audience know why some of the best arguments in the book, but I wanted to elaborate more on what the book actually contains. And we try to add a lot of visuals in the book, not just resources, but as you're going along, you can look over and you can see these developmental anomalies that he's talking about in visual format. We talk about these the different trees of life that they built that have been reevaluated and changed over time. Really, we've tried to leave no stone unturned. This book actually went from 100 pages to 200 by just fluke. The reason why is because a book that's 100 pages is actually fairly cheap to make, but by adding another 100 pages to it, it really doesn't drive the price up too bad. It's when you really get above that. We don't make any money on it unless it would be like a really small handbook. And we realize since it's only going to make us about 25 cents, let's just make it a bigger book and cover everything. So that's what we did. And we also offered the book in black and white. You can see it under show more below. And the reason we did that is because some of you probably don't want to spend the higher amount. So we have a cheaper version, and that will be the black and white. So every version that he offers on his channel, on his two books, there's a color version and a black and white version. I only offer one book, and that's the Evolutionary Rescue Device, and it's in pure color right now. And the reason why is because it's funny. It needs the color. It needs to
It does.
Yeah, my book's a little bit different, but jumping back to yours real quick, um, you mentioned some things that you go over in your debate a little bit as well. You talk about how people use these hierarchical forms to show that evolution is true, and you show how doing it with cars doesn't prove that there's any validity to it whatsoever. And you can extrapolate that and move it over into animals, and the same thing applies. There's no difference. So when people get really mad and say that cars aren't biological in life, you're using it as an example. It's an allegory. You're using it so people can picture this visually in their mind. So we show these visuals in the book. And there's something else on the screen you're showing.
No, well, I just haven't ended the share screen, but even the little YEC. Remember the 3 haplogroups? Yep, that's in the book. There's a whole chapter dedicated. See, Matt, you and I, we've offered a really strong alternative model. You know what I mean? So I spend, and then in the appendix where you've written a few chapters there, phenomenal chapters, especially the one on cladistics. You guys are going to love it. We've offered an alternative model, a much more powerful model that leads to testable predictions. A lot of them coming directly from Dr. Jensen himself, but instead of, we're rebutting evolutionary theory, human evolution, but we're also presenting a better case. Because a lot of times evolutionists will say, okay, you're arguing against evolution, but what's the better explanation? We've got a far better explanation. Even refuting, we're not just pointing out inconsistencies in the fossil record regarding Neanderthal, Erectus, Homo floresiensis, the Australopithecines, for example, Heidelbergensis. We're actually showing why these fit far better in the biblical model of ancestry. So I've got an entire chapter as well on separate ancestry, going over the Y chromosomal data, the predictions, the mitochondrial DNA, really powerful stuff. And that's why, yeah, like you were saying, originally it was only going to be 100 pages, but then we decided. So the first one I released, which a lot of people are getting, and I'm getting good feedback, which is good. That was the goal, was universal or separate ancestry, the biblical model of origins made easy. So that is just about 100 pages, where it's kind of like a brief overview of the best evidence. So there's still a great stuff in there, great sources, but I don't go into like incredible detail of like maybe what, because we know all the criticisms, we know all the arguments made by the evolutionists, right? The goal wasn't to make an endless 500-page book where we are addressing every single argument they make. This is for people who want to understand the biblical model of ancestry, understand how to refute universal common ancestry. The human evolution one, it's double the size. They're a little bit more technical, a little bit more sources, of course. And that's why we put a black and white edition, because we have so many visuals and sources in there, especially with the nested hierarchies, like you said, Matt, just to give people an idea. Okay, this is what they mean by hierarchies. This is how they apply it to the design world. This is what it looks like in the biological world. It's right there in your face, and it looks really, really good in the glossy color form. Unfortunately, like you were saying, yeah, it's expensive to print the colored versions like that, even in a 100 to 200 page book. So therefore, we offer the black and white as well. You can tell the black and white on the human evolution, because we took the same picture of the skulls, but we gave it a different angle, which is kind of cool. So it's like a variant. But that one's a little cheaper. It's black and white for those that just want the information. But the color looks really good. The glossy edition looks really good. Yeah, what do you think, Matt, about how like the sources are right on the pages for people in kind of visual form, where they can then go, if they want to research the exact paper, the paper name is there too, to read the whole thing. You like that approach, eh?
Yeah, it really works for me because I make videos all the time, and people love visuals. They love visuals a lot. It helps with learning as well, and that's what we're all about. And then when I started to go through and I looked at the analytics on your channel, and I realized the age group of people mostly watching your content, I realized that we should probably have more visuals, because that's what that age group is going to like. So we kind of go through it, and I've had to reword almost everything that I had down for myself, because realizing that the younger crowd is what likes this material, we have to be able to make it understandable for them. Again, that's why Kent Hovind is so popular. He makes everything more understandable to everybody on a really good level. Right. So I have a chapter in your book called Epigenetics. I really like that subject. Unfortunately, it gets really technical. So what I did is I went back to the drawing board and I wrote it up into a format that everybody can understand it now. And I really think that chapter is really going to devastate the evolutionary model, because epigenetics kind of rewrites their mutation model, which they rely so much on because of evolution. It needs mutations to be the driving force. But if epigenetics is more of the driver, then it overrides it.
And I just wanted to point out, people in the chat too, Redefine Living, brother. Yeah, I've seen you in the comment sections. I've seen you in the live chat. You are demolishing these evolutionists. He's saying he's using the arguments in the books. He's read through it, so that's awesome. And I can tell, because he's using some of these great arguments. I love watching it. Brother Daniel, good to see you. Ian, what's going on, man? Yeah, good to see everybody. So yeah, like you said, I mean, it's in visual form. It's more understandable. Like you said, that's why Kent kind of keeps it on a fourth grade level, because there's no sense in, writing a 200-page book where it's written in a way where, people are not really going to get anything from it. So that's not really the goal. But yeah, no, I think those, I know the visuals are helpful to me. Like you said, it's helpful to you as well. So, and we do have a couple others in the works too, because, we don't want to inflate the material here. So we've got, a couple books on the way where it's also going to address a lot of the common objections that you may find to some of the arguments presented. I just noticed somebody made a comment about RJ Downard. Yeah, see, here's the thing. Evolutionists, they don't know how to read between the lines, okay? Like someone like RJ, his books, quite frankly, are useless. Because if you've ever watched his series on trying to debunk contested bones replacing Darwin, Matt, we get a kick out of it because he's not even addressing any of the arguments. If you've seen my debate with him, he's just on mitochondrial DNA mutation clocks. No. He just kept saying no. Just denial. And he's trying to say that he debunks these in his books. But when you look at his critiques on YouTube, you look at his books, he's criticizing like the sources Dr. Jensen's using, or he's criticizing the fact that we're using a source that demonstrates that these retrotransposons are incredibly essential and functional to the genomes of living organisms. And he's saying, well, is the author a young earth creationist? What's their conclusion? See, they can't read between the lines, and it's really, really sad. They don't know how to come to their own conclusion. Just like this paper, which I show frequently throughout the book because it's just so devastating. This corroborates the thesis that these so-called transitionals are nothing more than 100% human people groups that unfortunately experience accelerated genetic degeneration. Boom. This is an evolutionary author admitting this is exactly what they find. Now, they can't read between the lines, though. They're going to look at what his explanation is, what his rescue device is. They're going to look at these ERV papers that say, oh, these must have been co-opted with no real evidence. The orphan genes, for example. Dr. Dan there will just assume, they've been de novo gene origin, for example. No, it's all circular reasoning. This is their rescue device. This is how they explain the unexplainable according to their model. So evolutionists don't know how to read between the lines. So somebody like RJ Downer, who spends all this time just critiquing sources and pointing these things out, it's not effective. He's not refuting the arguments. He's just kind of showing how biased these critics really are, and it's so obvious. I mean, don't you see it? I mean, you yourself, you're like, oh, I just wasted, 4 hours looking over and analyzing his replacing Darwin critique. How bad was that, Matt?
I watched over 6 hours of video, and he went to the resources on every single one, and it didn't get anywhere. There was nothing to critique. Literally, that.
I know.
I couldn't believe it. It's like when they try to say, look at these mutation rates. These don't show young Earth creation results. It's like, okay, why don't they? Because they all point to it being recent. So they say, well, you see, the author concluded that this was just a most recent common ancestor. So that just shows that all humans alive today go back to a single person 6,000 years ago. It doesn't mean that that was the first person of all humanity. It just means it was the first person to give birth to everybody alive today. It's kind of like, wait a minute, you don't see that is exactly what our model predicts? What bottleneck do you know of in your evolutionary model that says happened 6,000 years ago? Nothing. So every other woman on Earth 6,500 years ago evaporated, and only one gave birth to the lineage of all human beings alive on Earth. I mean, their rescue device doesn't add up. It doesn't line up to what they're saying. So they just, when they invoke that the author didn't conclude that, so what? They want to get their grant money. They need to get another job. They have to conform to the evolutionary assumption that evolution is true, no matter what the outcome. And the outcome doesn't show evolution, especially in these mutation rates. So when he's getting into like, well, Jensen concluded his own mutation rate. No, he didn't.
Yeah, he didn't just pull it out. And that's why we often... in one of the after shows, a few after shows ago, I was probably about over an hour just back and forth with Dr. Cardinal there. And he's trying to say, Jensen is using a mutation rate that includes somatic cell line mutations. It's ridiculous because the very paper that he's trying to say that Jensen is admitting a problem, and I don't have it right in front of me right now, but it is referenced in this book. Dr. Nathaniel Jensen looks at the D loop, which is definitely germline, okay, which gives a consistent rate, a fast rate in the mitochondrial DNA, consistent with 6,000 years. That is 100% germline. He tries to say, oh, it's too variable, we can't look at it. Okay. So in the same paper that he thinks Jensen admits kind of defeat, because there's a Ding paper where Dr. Jensen says, okay, we need to figure out if these are really germ cell line mutations. Those are the ones that are passed on, or somatic. Those aren't going to be passed on. So that would give the appearance of a faster mutation rate. So I get all that. It makes sense. Here's the thing. Those whole mitochondrial genome pedigree-based studies, lots of them, they look at all the letters, okay? They corroborate the results from the D-loop region, the coding region, which we know is germline. So he's going to say, okay, the D-loop, that's highly variable. We can't look at that. Then he looks at the whole mitochondrial genome, pedigree-based studies. That's also showing a fast mutation rate consistent with 6,000 years. He's saying, oh, no, those are not considering somatic mutations. Why are they all corroborating with each other? It's just excuse after excuse. The point is, they're going to disagree that this rate truly is germ cell line, okay? They're going to say, no, Jensen's rate is 35 times too fast. It's including somatic cell line mutations. That's not true. The fact is, we can be confident. They have ways. They know how to determine what is somatic. They know how to determine what is heteroplasmy. There's ways to do it. There's a number of papers that all corroborate with the same fast mutation rate, and it's germline. But of course they're not going to admit to a 6,000 year Eve date. So they can't read between the lines. Like you said, they're gonna see what the real date looks to. Then they're gonna read the phylogenetic method. They're gonna read the phylogeny-based assumptions, how they calibrate the data, and they're gonna say, oh, creationists are cherry picking. It's like, why would we calibrate the empirical data with their assumed deep time history, their geological column? That makes no sense, since the deep time is exactly what is in question. We're not going to calibrate it with that, since the observed mutation rate is inconsistent with the geological column, right? I mean, you know what I'm saying, brother.
Exactly. There's no reason that we would assume evolution to be true, and that's the very model that we're falsifying to show that ours is true. And when the observational data keeps showing that it's consistent with what our model says, then I don't know what else there is to really say. I mean, they can deny it all they want, but when all the observational rates inside the human body biologically show that we're young, and that SNVs are single nucleotide pleomorphs, all these things are new in humanity. Everything shows low, everything shows common relation. They had to invoke bottlenecks to explain it away. We don't invent these, they do. So they're the ones that are making themselves look bad, and then they're saying that we're cherry picking the data.
Right.
That's all that's going on. They know they're losing, and they just don't like it. So they don't like us in return because we point it out. So that's all there is to it. Evolution is protected by law. It's the only theory in science that is. So they need it to be true, and we're the ones pointing out all the flaws, and they go, whoa, they just get mad at it. But so what? Get mad all you want.
And it's funny, but their conclusions, and it's not, just like you said, they have to invoke bottleneck after bottleneck with no real evidence for it. I cover that a lot about their hypothetical out of Africa population bottleneck that would have been extended. It would have gone on for, actually, it's very hard to find an actual number. That's the thing. All they're doing is invoking a hypothetical bottleneck to reduce homogeneity. Okay, they need to reduce low genetic diversity to explain why humans today have low genetic diversity. Guess what? If we came from just two ancestors in the recent past, Adam and Eve, we would predict low genetic diversity. And it just so happens that that's what we see. Low genetic diversity. We see one mitochondrial DNA line. We see one Y chromosomal line. We can see evidence for BABO in our genetics with the allele frequencies, with geographical specific Y chromosomes, for example. I mean, I cover this in great detail. So we don't need to look to these rescue devices. And yeah, you'll have a hard time finding, any expert in evolution giving a solid date for how long this bottleneck lasted. Was it 1,000 years? Was it 10,000 years? There would have been so much inbreeding and mutations being fixated that this population of 2 to 10,000, whatever it was, would have been so highly degenerated there's no realistic, they can invoke it as a story, but there's no realistic way that this population of highly genetically damaged 2 to 10,000 people could have spread out in all parts of the world, seizing dominion over the planet. So I go over that in detail. But even with the human fossils, Homo floresiensis, the hobbits, okay, they they try and push that as some kind of transitional, when in fact the paleo experts themselves will agree with our conclusions, suggesting that the unique features, like for example, the asymmetry of the skull, the flat-footedness, the reduced brain size, the reduced body size seen in the hobbits, Naledi, this one specifically hobbits, they will agree that those features are explained due to pathology, the same pathologies that are seen in modern humans. And we've got secular sources proving this. The small body size and reduced brain size, for example, clearly due to island dwarfism. The evolutionists aren't even going to disagree with that. Island dwarfism is resulted from inbreeding, reductive evolution, reductive selection, for example. So, and even a lot of these paleo experts, you can read in their papers, they classify Hobbit as just a variation of Erectus or Homo sapiens, for example. Like, these are just normal 100% people groups subject to inbreeding, accelerated genetic degeneration. The paleo experts themselves corroborate this data. There's no conspiracy. There's no cherry picking. It's just better understood from a biblical model of ancestry. It fits nicely with us. Everything does. They're the ones that got to resort to these rescue devices. Eric here, the paleo expert in that paper, above on the, where is it? I'm still on this one. Over here, he's admitting the probability of finding these things is vanishingly small. Of course, when you got the evolutionary starting point and model. So a real quick shout out. Looks like we got Joe. Sister Joe, good to see you. Dwayne Burke, Honesty Angel, awesome. Thanks for joining today. Thanks for all the support. Logical, plausible, probable. I need testable, repeatable predictions. Teach him. He's probably practiced that line over and over again. And when you give him a testable, repeatable prediction, what does he do, Matt? In one ear and out the other.
Well, yeah. No. He goes, well, is it peer reviewed? Is it peer reviewed?
Do the atheists agree with the methodology?
Right.
That's the only one he's going to accept.
Crazy.
That's funny.
That's what's so confusing. It's kind of like, well, I don't think anybody takes this into consideration much. It's like the statistical probability of these dates landing on the young Earth creation model, what the Bible predicted. I don't think that they can even logically say that the coincidences show that all humans descend from a single female, 6,000 or so years ago. Yeah, I mean, what out of all the dates on Earth, it's just going to land hypothetically on exactly what the biblical model predicts, and then the Y chromosome pops up and it goes directly to the flood? I mean, come on, people, really? I mean, are you that biased that you're going to have to invoke like lottery odds? Well, probably even higher. It's just unbelievable.
Well, what's the rescue device, Matt, for the DNA barcoding? The highly conserved CO1 gene, the low genetic diversity across all forms of life that suggests 90% of all animal species today came about at the same time alongside human beings. What do they say? Oh, well, why is it 90% and not 100%?
Yeah, it's like, well, something has to go into a bottleneck to come out of it. I mean, you can't magically get. Well, yeah, you can get a bird from a dinosaur. So yeah.
See, they seem to think that when we bring up that study, which once again, and I love how in your rescue device book, you point out, I finished that in a day with a coffee and some good laughs. You point out that afterwards, after the paper came out and they realized, oh no, we just proved creation and the flood bottleneck. For one, they seem to think that that's the creation event. No, this is the flood bottleneck. There's animals that went into it and came out of it, okay? So it makes sense that it's 90% of all species, not 100%. Secondly, you show how, and if you could cover this briefly, the authors of the paper, didn't they give a disclaimer afterwards saying, hey, at the beginning of it now, that says, hey, we hold to evolution and this is consistent with evolution, because they've seen how everybody was jumping on this paper saying, oh no, this is proof for biblical creation. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Matter of fact, I'll even try to screen share.
Oh, here, yeah. Let me end the screen share. There's your ancestors, guys.
Yeah, keep in mind
Monkey
that's
man.
your grandpa, friend. Be nice. No laughing at him. That's your grandpa. He wouldn't like that.
There's Grandpa. Is that you?
So I'm not sure what it is exactly, so I'll scroll down until I find it. But this book is designed to make you laugh, and it's going to laugh at, even if you're an evolutionist, you're going to laugh at what they come up with to save face at what they've predicted and what wasn't true. And it's down the line. It's pretty much no matter where you look, no matter what field of science. I don't just stick to biology. I go all over. I'm talking about everything. When they find whales on mountaintops, for example, what do they say about that? So what happens when they find two snakes entwined together and one of them's a rattlesnake? Uh-oh, rattlesnakes didn't evolve till 12 million years ago. Problems like that. Anyway, we go into a lot of detail on a lot of different subjects, but the one that he's talking about is one of my favorites because the study itself is huge. It's the largest study they've ever done in biology. They used millions of creatures. I mean, that is insane. The entire database for the CO1, which is a gene that's inside the mitochondria, and they tested it to figure out like what is the genetic diversity between all life today, and they found it was extremely low. So therefore, everything had to have come out of a bottleneck. So they invented a bottleneck that came out recently for this. And so here it is. Here's I'll zoom in so everybody can see it. I'm thinking this is the top. Right. So here's what they had to say about it in the study. They said this, why it should define as a species. This is the most clear and data-rich thing ever found. Sorry, I lost it because it zoomed in too far. Okay, here's the beginning of the study. And here's what the scientists said about it. They said, clearly, anchovies and herring won't go into a worldwide catastrophic bottleneck as well because the Noah's flood killed aquatic life. They don't believe that, so that's why they wrote this. They're very confused at why a bottleneck would have killed all the aquatic life as well. So then the conclusion was that, I don't know, so they fought against it as hard as they could. And then they said that there is no traces in the geological record of anything happening 200,000 years ago. So then they're in trouble for that. So then they invoked that probably something else happened, that they're not sure what that was. So they really don't have a good rescuing device because they admit that the absence of in-between species also perplexed Darwin. And here's what they wrote, founded. This was added December 4th, 2018, a few months after the study. It says, in this study was grounded and strongly supports Darwinian evolution, including the understanding that all life has evolved from a single common biological origin over several billion years ago. They had to actually say it because the study completely contradicted that very notion. So that's the headline now. So when you go to the study, that's the first thing you read, which they added because they know that all of us creationists were using this study to debunk them. It was great. So ironic. So ironic.
It's too funny. And that's why evolutionary rescue devices, there could probably be a 20-part series on that because they are notorious for rescue devices and for everything too. Their so-called best evidence that they've praised for years, in genetics. Well, look at the CO1 gene, look at the low genetic diversity, look at what's coming out from the secularists themselves, and everything, chromosomal 2 fusion, ERV, pseudogenes, orphan genes, nothing but rescue device after rescue device, when in fact it's the biblical creationists that are actually making the predictions, the accurate retrodictions. Couple shout outs. Alec, brother, good to see you. Brother Guzman, always a pleasure. Guzman says, reading Matt's books is like watching his videos, LOL. He even puts the laughing dudes in it. That's what's so funny about the rescue device one you wrote, Matt. It does feel like you're watching a video. That's all you can do, right? Is you just have to laugh at these these explanations, and the fact that they had to give a disclaimer.
Right.
It's good to see you there, the Orthodox Moor. You did a great job on the after show yesterday, brother. So we've probably spent about 45 minutes covering in detail. He says he just got here the notification for this, so
Oh, God.
we did cover quite a bit on the human evolution, brother, with all the hominids and the Australopithecines. So you can. Well, I think we're going to be probably going on to the Orthodox Moors channel for an interview on that. So I guess instead of reiterating everything, we'll be happy to. And here's the thing: we're more than happy to defend anything in our writings too. So especially on the human evolution. I mean, human evolution has just been overturned. I mean, I love the fact that and what I was showing earlier was just a slideshow. So when you actually look in the book, the physical book itself, you're going to see all these sources. You're going to see this paper that corroborates all the arguments. If anyone wants to look at it beforehand, Eric, last name Trinkaus, spelled Trinkaus, an abundance of developmental anomalies and abnormalities in the Pleistocene people. Exactly what we would expect to find in these human people groups. They're not transitional. They're not primitive. Matt, it's just so funny how so with Australopithecus sediba and Homo habilis, which are clearly artificial species, okay, mixture of human bones and ape bones. Gutsy Gibbon made a video recently trying to say, actually no, she didn't cover the paleo experts themselves that agree with this and that have pointed this out. You'll see those sources in the book, but I pointed out, how come you didn't kind of show that there are some paleo experts that agree that this is just a jumbled mess, not real species. And what the evolutionists will say is, well, Lee Berger, right, who is associated with the finds, he disagrees. He really believes this, this is a real transitional species. It's like, of course, Lee Berger, who his son, Matthew Berger, was the one who found the first bone attributed to Sediba. Of course, he's not going to tap out and say, yeah, this is just a mixture of bones. That explains why the contradictory nature of it. It almost looks like a Pokemon sometimes. That was just completely human features and not even like any evidence of transitional. It's just like the hand completely human versus, some other parts that are completely ape. You'll see this in the book. But what do you think of that, Matt? Lee Berger, he disagrees with that conclusion, though. How do you respond to such a thing?
Oh, geez, not the notorious fraud that's known for creating fake missing links. He agrees? That is a shocker. Wow. I can't believe the guy who's known for finding fake missing links agrees that his newest missing link is true. That's so bizarre. Well, that's not biased at all, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, it's it doesn't get any funnier than that. That of course,
the experts actually in the field, that do science, not that go looking for bones like Lee Berger, completely disagree with him. That's pretty ironic, don't you think?
Yeah, you gotta love how these are the ones that are always finding, apparently, the big missing links, right?
Yeah, exactly. The biggest frauds of all. The ones that are paid to find them are the ones.
The fame, the fortune.
Yeah, they said that's strange because these his last one, the Hobbit, he goes, it's so strange. It looks like the bones were just thrown in by hand. Anybody could have come across this cave and found them. Isn't that weird and peculiar? It's like, well,
was that Naledi? Was that Naledi?
Yes, the bones were sitting on the top of the surface in a cave, and
right.
Scientists said it looks like somebody walked by and threw them in.
Yeah, so what? Lee Berger disagrees with the paleo experts that are saying that fossils like Sediba are, just artificial species. Lee Berger disagrees with it, so I guess we're just gonna have to throw out the obvious conclusion. But another thing too that I cover in the Human Evolution book is the fact that these Homo variants, anyways, like Neanderthals, Denisovans, Erectus, Hobbit, which is Homo floresiensis and Naledi, Ergaster, Rudolfensis, Heidelbergensis, whatever, you name it. the evidence suggests, especially in DNA, that they were just part of a large interbreeding meta population. And these supposed, pre-humans, primitive human species coexisted, they interbred, they interacted. This is why the paleo experts themselves, you just read their own stuff, and they are confused. They are saying that, wow, the more we find, the more we learn, the more confusing human evolution is. But guess what, Matt? They won't ever question what? The actual theory itself. They'll just keep saying it's confusing, it's becoming more confusing, and they'll fit it in any way they can, but they'll never question the bigger picture, right?
No, they can't, because remember, their job hinges on it. Their credibility hinges on it. You don't become a creationist and don't have repercussions. You think Mary Schweitzer, after watching her fellow microscopist get fired from his job, is now going to say, "You're right, those dinosaur bones are young"? Of course she's not going to say that. She's going to immediately say, yeah, it's really old and I like my job."
Yeah, no, it's pretty sad, the state of human evolution right now. Even in the, just looking at the chat here, got some good people. So thanks for joining, everybody. Seriously, yeah, I see logical, plausible, probable again. Check out the after show last night. That was too funny. Jason was kicking some butt too. I mean, this is a team of warriors that we've got going on now, man. It's like these evolutionists are on the and that's the thing. That's our goal with these books, is put them on the defense, because that's where they are. Press them for the testable predictions. Press them for the better and alternative explanations. They've really got nothing, and that's why they have to just kind of look to some of the Australopithecines that have some unique features with like Lucy. Or they'll look at Ardipithecus. Ardipithecus, they're always showcasing that pelvis. What do you think of that, Matt? Oh, this is transitional.
The pulverized pelvis that was in like 182 pieces. Yeah, that's a real good piece of evidence. One pelvis out of one species that was so badly damaged they couldn't even touch it without it breaking into pieces. Yeah, that's a really good piece of evidence. That's totally worth building your whole theory of evolution on. Totally.
Well, and that's the thing. There's just the evidence is just so fragmentary, in the fossil record. And that's, after I cover that, I also get into a few lines of evidence just with like, for example, the hobbits, Erectus. There is evidence that, Erectus could sail, evidence that the hobbits, they had a very strong cultural inventory, like everything, not even just the genetics, not the pathology seen in the bones that they look to as transitional. It all corroborates that we're looking at just fully human people groups that fits perfectly well with the post-Babel event. And they're on the defense. The evolutionists right now, they're kind of falling apart, aren't they, Matt?
They are. Well, that's what's really cool is the model that Jensen has formatted can get creation back in schools. And it doesn't have to be religious, because everything follows biology. Everything about it doesn't invoke a miracle. And that's what they don't like. They want to keep it away as much as possible. They want naturalism to be the religion of the education system. And they want to keep as much evolutionary dogma as they possibly can, because that is exactly what they've pushed all this time. And then to recant and say like, okay, well, maybe it's wrong, or maybe there's another theory. They don't want that. They can't have it. And that's the best part, is because they are unable to stop Jensen. So that brings us to our next books, which we can talk on next time, because this one's already been so long. But I wrote one just called The Young Earth Creation Model. And I should have named it The New Young Earth Creation Model, because it is new. And we both are writing in this book, and we elaborate on what Jensen has done, because his book is so technical and so detailed. Sometimes he'll just touch on one thing and then have to move on, and you're kind of left like, wait a minute, what? And then one of those things are mutation rates. You know this as well as I do. He really only gives about 1 to 2 pages on it. That's why so many people think he's wrong.
Right. Yeah.
So we take that and we go to the next level and we go down the entire chart, going all the way back to the very first studies in 1996 by Howell, who obtained the rates of mutations, about 25 to 40 mutations per generation being passed on. So what was going on is he obtained the first mtDNA mutation rates of Eve about 6,000 to 6,500 years ago. And then in 1997, it happened again with Mum. And then in Parsons, it was vindicated by one of the largest studies. And then again, Ann Gibbons the next year, 98, and then 99, and then 2003. We show all these studies that all collaborate with each other. And then they invented the assumed phylogenetic rate. And boom, that threw everything off. And the public now forgot about the observed pedigree studies because they only look at the phylogenetic studies. So we elaborate and make Jensen's theory one stronger, and we add our own predictions in it as well.
Elaborate on it.
Exactly. And we make our own predictions all throughout the book. I think I have 50 in there now.
Well, and that's the thing too, is you're right. You know, replacing Darwin, the section on the mitochondrial DNA mutation rates in regards to the pedigree-based studies, yeah, it's only 1 or 2 pages. You know, you'd have to go into the end notes and look to his other papers and look at the sources there and see the other papers that you just cited. You're right. And you know, we put them directly, we expand on it more in these books, and also show kind of rebuttals that you might not find in replacing Darwin, for example. Like, they'll oftentimes criticize Dr. Jensen, or I think I've been saying it wrong this whole time, Jensen, but Jensen, however you say it, his, you know, they'll say that his studies omit things, or using a false mutation rate. And the fact is, they never address why are they working so well, though. Why is he why are there so many confirmed predictions right now? Why is he detecting so many genetic signatures in the Y chromosome? Why is he able to make testable predictions? You know what I mean? So another big thing too that we point out in the books is the fact that Dr. Jensen hasn't just looked at human mitochondrial DNA mutation rates. He's looking at other species and their mutation rates across multiple independent data sets that are also corroborating on a young date of 6,000 years. So it's obviously safe to assume, for so many reasons that we can't get into here, that we're looking at a germ cell line mutation rate. The rate and then the amount of DNA differences in the Y chromosome, the mitochondrial DNA, they're consistent with a young date. You know, even when I was having that dialogue on John's after show with Dr. Dan there, because he's just complaining about Jensen. He's not accounting for somatic cell line mutations, which is wrong. We can be confident it's germ cell line. So I just kind of broke it down and said, listen, the fact is the mitochondrial DNA mutates fast. And this goes for the Y chromosome too. Do you agree? He says yes. Do you agree there's the max amount of DNA differences in the mitochondrial DNA between any two people is very few. It's only like 130 or something like that. The fact is the mitochondrial DNA mutates fast and there's few differences, okay? This only points to one conclusion. The most recent common ancestor for mitochondrial DNA lived just a few thousand years ago. This is consistent with our model. They have to resort to substitution rates, which is not as good as mutation rates. We know that, but they got to resort to it. They have to resort to like heteroplasmy. They'll have to say that mutation rates were slower in the past, whatever. We cover all these things, but nothing but, as you would say, Matt, rescue devices.
Yeah, exactly. Always a rescue device. Somebody in the comment section said, and atheism comes naturally. I couldn't help myself. I said, yeah, so naturally that only 5% of the world believes it.
Right.
There's nothing natural about it at all.
Well, sometimes when you watch the debates, or when you're in the debates, or you're just listening to, like, I was getting a kick out of the after show last night. You know, I gave my thoughts and then I just kind of listened in, and it's like, man, especially near the end, there was a guy in there, Peter. He runs an atheist talk show, And John was just, the line of questioning John was doing was just textbook. And he was just, this atheist, Peter, was just digging himself into a hole deeper and deeper and deeper. And it's like, man, this guy cannot, he came in, he tried to ask a few theological questions, and he was given good answers. John gave a phenomenal answer. And then now it's time to question him. Let's question and expose his worldview. And he's not a geneticist, he's not a biologist, he doesn't have any answers. He's being cornered. And I'm thinking, like, man, it's got to be hard to argue for that side of naturalism. There's no way. Oh, look, like we got a super chat. Shreeded, thanks so much. We appreciate the support. He says, just got here. I'm learning so much. Awesome. That's our goal. If anyone ever has any questions, just let us know, email us. We're free to, we'll go on any channel and kind of explain our position and elaborate. We're happy to do that. He says, love what you do and keep fighting the good fight and tearing down all ideology that opposes the knowledge of Christ. Thank you. And you know what? I always say anybody can win an argument. It's winning souls that matters. And that's ultimately what we hope to accomplish, is bring people to the truth and tear down those blinders, open their hearts to the gospel of Jesus Christ. That was a hindering point for me coming out of college. I held to evolution. You did too, Brother Matt. And I never really, I didn't take the gospel of Jesus Christ very seriously because I was kind of hindered by the false science, the pseudoscience. And the things that I was taught kind of made me think, okay, the Bible is not accurate in science and history. It's just analogies, symbolic. But once I realized what a fraud evolution was, and let's be serious. The young Earth creation model right now and the position against evolution is stronger than it's ever been. So it wasn't even as strong, back when I finally realized it was a lie, it was a fraud, it was pseudoscience. Then the blinders were moved and I was open to the gospel, when I got saved. Of course, that's the most important part. So yeah, amen. Great super chat, brother. That's what it's about, man. It's just kind of teaching the truth and hopefully open people's minds to it. So what are your thoughts, Brother Matt?
I agree, man. We should probably do another one of these because we still have 2 other books to talk about.
Yeah, exactly. And not to mention a couple. Well, a hint. We've so Matt and I have been working on this for what, probably over a year and a half.
Yeah.
Collecting data, sources, notes. So these books are like almost a couple years in the making. So that's why. We have another one that we've been working on for a while too, that's going to directly address these books do, that this one's we're going to make sure that a lot of the common objections are also just demolished. And we're going to, people that are familiar with Aaron Ra's phylogeny challenge, this is going to be a complete demolition of that. So there's a few things we're working on as well in the future, but plus we got a couple other books to talk about. So hey, did you want to give just a quick breakdown of those ones, and then we can do another stream later and really hammer those? Me and Matt want to do more of these streams from now on too. So go ahead, Brother Matt.
Sure. Yeah, we got to get together a little bit more often with our team in general, just to go over things, because we each learn something new every week. So it's a great way to get together and kind of share what we learned, not with each other, but with the audience as well. So what's unique is your book is filled with information. Mine is more, it's informative, but it's informative in a joking way. Yours is meant to educate. So yours is a little bit different than mine. But the one is called Universal or Separate Ancestry, the Biblical Model of Origins Made Easy. That really kind of covers whether or not mutations really are the construction or destruction. It covers what evolution actually is and what it teaches. And then we go over what the evidence is that we actually see. And then we get into, at the end, I kind of write like a little ending for that called a p-value. It's a statistical probabilities. Yeah. It's things that line up. And I really like that. And then I try to answer, of course, we go into, biology again, and we dive into what is a kind, because that is always something people bring up. And we go into the multiple different ways and methods we can identify what a kind is. So that's your book. And then the other one I did touch on for briefly, it was just called The Young Earth Creation Model. That
Yes.
one's really large. That one's like about 350 pages or more. And it's not color, because if it was color, the minimum price I could charge was $30.
Yeah.
So there's no point. It's just an information book anyway. It's not to look nice. It's not to really portray much. So I just made it a black and white version, just nothing but information. So
Right.
that'll be like the resource people can go to if they really want to go super in detail about any of the particular subjects we always talk on. But your book is more outlined for a beginner, somebody that goes, I need to understand these arguments so that I can reply to them to my fellow my family, my fellow students, my teachers, whatever it may be. That's where your books come in.
Well, what's amazing, and I've got all the books in front of me right here. So, and I've got multiple copies of each of them. So the Young Earth Creation Model, the one you wrote, this one's phenomenal because you're right, it's huge. And I've also got here, so the one I wrote, Biblical Model of Origins Made Easy, with your appendix at the back, the p-value, which is awesome. I've had people say that that's one of their favorite parts of the book. That's absolute destruction. So when you look at some of this stuff, let's say where, yeah, you broke it down really good, especially in the Made Easy one. We go through like what is evolution, how do we determine ancestry, mutations, construction or destruction. They're looking at mutations and natural selection to take their fish to fishermen, so that's important. Then we go over the evidence that's actually consistent on both sides: nested hierarchies, homology, mosaics, you name it. And then the final chapter, before the p-value section and the kind section, is the differentiating evidence. Let's look at the evidence that can actually tell us which model is true. And that's where biblical creation comes out on top, big time. Now, when you look at certain things here and you say, I really want to I want to go dig deep on this certain line of evidence, then boom, you go to the Young Earth Creation Model that you wrote. You're absolutely right. The way you laid it out is just like a giant encyclopedia, it looks like, where it's just a lot of information in there. And you can go to these certain sections, like let's say here on the DNA barcoding, for example, and you just go, you really hammer it in, or like the species, the exact, how many, let's say with birds or lizards or snakes, for example. But this is a great resource, just packed with information. For example, heterozygosity, the front-loaded genetic diversity model. I cover it, explain it, make it understandable. It's almost written as a narrative. Then you can go into your book here with incredible resources, and it goes in deep. Highly technical with a lot of predictions and stuff. So to me, I love having that next to me when I'm reading the more narrative style books too, just to go and maybe get a little bit more on the technicals of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Some people love technical information. Me and you are a type of person that likes that. We kind of need that. We absorb information like crazy, so we can help try to break it down. We're getting better at making it legible for younger people, but I still struggle with that a little. Getting better. But that's why this book exists, because it goes into the technical detail for those. That's why I really don't push the book as much as I push yours, because yours are what the people need the most. About 10% of the people are probably going to like my book. So, by the way, you got a super chat in there. Just thought you would.
Yes. So, amen, brother. And Alec Cox, we love you in the chat, man. You're always demolishing evolutionism. This guy knows what he's talking about. So he says, evolution is bogus. Amen, brother. The paper presented by Ian Chen, in the light of many inconclusive results, a common refrain is that DNA decay rates cannot be predicted. And here's the fact. And I really realized this talking to Dan Cardinal for about an hour. You'd have to go to the after show, one of John's very memorable after shows. All of his after shows are awesome. John is a warrior, man. This guy is a beast. I've never seen anybody so good at these arguments, just tearing down atheism using intelligent design, and just, yeah, John's awesome. That after show titled, I think it was the Kent versus Garrett one. Dan was on there, talked about mutation rates and stuff for a long time, probably over an hour. But I realized, okay, this is the best they got, right? And they have to really, really stick to this whole idea that we can't get a real germ cell line mutation. They have to say that. Jensen, his mutation rates are too fast. You got to account for the somatic mutation substitution rates. When in fact, we know, Matt, we know we have a consistent germ cell line mutation rate. It's fast, it's consistent with the Eve date, and it makes testable predictions.
Well,
the fact that they think that we can't get an actual accurate mutation rate, I mean, what do you think about that?
I think it's funny because they invoke consistent rates on nearly everything. And yet when it comes to mutation rates, they say it can't be because it disproves us. You see what I mean? They're immediately the type of person that will invoke radiometric dating and say that it's consistent and it's a consistent thing in the past and we can use it to date things. And then you go, well, the mutation rate seems to be pretty constant. We can make predictions on that. They go, no, you can't.
It really is laughable. We got one last super chat, guys. We're going to do this more often. Unfortunately, I did this during nap time, and Matt, I know you feel my pain too, and I can hear the kids now kind of crying. So I got fatherly duties to do. But Ian Chen here, who you know what, even though he holds to evolution and atheism, we love his comments. We love him in the chat. And you know what, he gives good feedback and asks good questions, and that's what we like. We like differing opinions that can get us to think and look at and analyze, and not just like ad hominems and stuff. So Ian, thanks so much, man. He gave us a super chat. He says, great to support SFT, but I didn't send any paper. Must be a conversation going on in the live chat that I missed, not sure. But he pointed out in a comment the other day too that he's excited for the Kent and Dan Cardinal debate. That's the 23rd, 8:30 EST, 7:30 Central. So that's going to be one to remember, guys. So, yeah, actually, it looks like logical, plausible, probable. The evolution destroyer himself. If I was an atheist, I'd be terrified to go up against John. This guy's like, he's great, man. So subscribe to John's channel. If you haven't already, he's putting out some great content. And Matt, you and I have been at this for a couple of years now, and we've put on a lot of after shows, and we've had some memorable ones way back in the day. Remember, we'd have 10 of us, me, you, Matt, Jeremy, CRISPR, Dragnot, all of these guys, right? But John, he's putting on some of the best after shows I've ever seen. So go subscribe to his channel. He's also put out a link to the chat. I'm guessing the one that Dan and I had. So, but Dan and I will be having more of a formal debate after the Kent one too. So thanks for the super chat, guys. Ian, of course. Yeah, we love your feedback. Yeah, enough for me, Matt. Any final thoughts? Anything you want to throw out there, brother?
No, I guess that we'll come back on here and we'll elaborate on other two books like we did the first two. And sorry, I haven't been making some videos for you guys. I'll get back on that here fairly soon. We might even, I might not. I think we might even be starting on our next set of books. So
we are.
There goes another month of our life.
Well, you know what? Yeah, I tell you, when you're doing it and you're writing 8 hours, 9 hours of it just flies by. It's like, what? Yeah. That was a fully, if only, going to work would fly by that fast. But exactly. No, we've got more books coming your way, guys. So like I said, thanks for the super chat. Subscribe to Logical, Plausible, Probable, and thanks for everybody who joined. We're going to do more of these. Maybe we'll do another one tomorrow or this weekend for sure. Yeah, thanks so much, everybody, for listening in. And if you've got ideas, questions, feedback, let us know. And yeah, that's enough for me, guys. Thanks so much.
All right. Take care, guys.
God bless.